everyone, so today we're going to continue with rational numbers, but specifically we're going to be looking at multiplying fractions. So if you could please open your notebooks. Today's lesson correlates with 5.4, reducing, rewriting, and multiplying fractions, and then the page number for me is 26. So today's date is April 29th. Again, we're working on reducing, rewriting, and multiplying fractions, and then my page number is 26. So let's start with reducing fractions, because when you work on problems, that's in the end the last thing that you have to do, and it's important. So reducing fractions. So let's first go through the steps. So step 1 is going to be to find a common factor. And this would be of your numerator and your denominator. So if both your numerator and denominator, what is a common factor? 2 is going to be to divide both by that common factor. So I know that those are really simple steps, but that's pretty much what it is. So let's work through some examples so that we can see what that looks like and what that really means. So first example, let's do 4/8. We'll keep it simple to start. So I can see just by looking at that, oh, come on, focus, that 4 is going to be a common factor, both 4 and 8. So I'm going to divide both my numerator and my denominator by 4, and I get 1/2. Okay, let's do another one. Say it's 6/18. I see that 6 goes into both 6 and 18. So that becomes 1, and that becomes 3. Okay, let's do 2 more. Let's do a harder one, 14/36. So I see for both of these that 2, because they're both even, 2 is a factor, which, let's see, 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 36 divided by 2 is 18. Okay, let's do a pretty hard one. Let's say I get 48/200. Now, in all of these, I only divided once, but you don't have to do it that way. So let's say I look at this and I go, I don't know what the biggest factor is of 48 and 200. You can just start dividing by a factor that you know. So these obviously are both even, so I'm going to divide by 2. And when I divide by 2, I get 24/100. Let's say now looking at these, I know that 4 is a common factor. I get 6/25, and the only common factor now is 1, so I'm done. So you don't need to divide by the biggest thing to start out. That's definitely the quickest way to do it. But if you don't see it right away, just divide by a number that you know goes into it, and then keep on dividing until it can't be divided anymore. Okay, next thing is going to be converting mixed numbers to improper fractions. So step 1 is going to be to multiply whole number and denominator, and then step 2 is going to be to add to numerator. So let's work through some examples so that these steps make sense in terms of fractions. And the reason that this is important is because when you are multiplying and dividing fractions, you cannot leave them as mixed numbers. You have to convert them. So this is a really important skill to have, because again, you cannot multiply mixed numbers in fractions. You have to convert them first. So let's say I had 2 and 4/5. So the way to do this is kind of the trick, and then I'll show you why it works, is I would do 5 times 2, which is 10, plus 4, which is 14. So my new fraction would be 14/5. But let's go through and I'll show you why this works. So if I have 2 here, and let's say I wanted to convert it to a mixed number, really this is saying 2 and 5/4 or 2 plus 5/4. So when I add fractions, obviously I have to have a common denominator. So I could make this 2. I could either make it 5/5, or 2 is really the same thing as 10/5. Plus 4/5. So when I do that, I get 14/5. So what this is saying is 5 times 2, so that's kind of in a way converting this to 10/5 or 2. And then I'm adding it to my original fraction. But the quick way to do it, if I had, let's say, 3 1/2, is I kind of think of it like a circle. So I start here, I multiply, I take that, and I add it. So I get 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7, so I get 7/2. So this is the long way, and then this is kind of the quick trick. Okay, now let's look at how we do it the other way. So converting improper fractions to mixed numbers. So oftentimes you're going to be asked for your answer in the simplest form, and most of the time the simplest form means a mixed number. Not always, but most of the time when they ask it in the simplest form, they want it back as a mixed number. And so it's important to know how to go from improper fractions back to a mixed number. So how you do this is you divide numerator by denominator, and then your remainder becomes your new fraction. So let's work through some examples. So let's say I have 14 thirteenths, or sorry, 14 thirds. So one way to do it is I could just think about it. How many times does 3 go into 14? Goes in 4 times, which gives me 12, which means I would have 2 left over. So I would get 4 2/3. But let's do the division just to show you. So I would have 14 divided by 3. So 3 goes into 14 4 times. 4 times 3 is 12, so I subtract 12 and I get 2 left over. So my fraction becomes 4 2/3, which is what I did when I just thought about it. So let's do one more, 36/5. So if I just think about it, 5 goes into 36 6 times. Or sorry, not 6 times, 7 times. So that gives me 35, which is 1 left over. But now let's divide, just to double check. So that goes in 7 times. 5 times 7 is 35. I get 1 left over. So my fraction becomes 7 1/5. Okay, last thing is going to be multiplying fractions, and we'll do multiplying fractions again tomorrow, but let's just quickly go over that. So step 1 is to make sure there are no mixed numbers. Step 2 is going to be to multiply across. And then step 3 is reduce or rewrite. And rewrite, potentially. So let's just do a few really quick examples. And we're not going to be doing step 1 today. We're just going to pretend that those don't exist, and tomorrow we'll get into that. So let's say I have 3/4 times 7/8. 3 times 7, so again, it's to multiply across. I'm not going to make you rewrite it. So it's 3 times 7, which is 21. 4 times 8 is 32. They share no common factors, so I am done. Next one, 1/2 times 4/5. 1 times 4 is 4. 2 times 5 is 10. Here, they do share common factors, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2, because that's their common factor, and I get 2/5. And for the sake of time, so you're not taking notes for 15 minutes, I'm going to stop here.